Will Kliff stay? Will Kyler play? And will the Cardinals have it easy the rest of the way? It's rhyme time. Alex Clancy, Bo Brack, Locked on Cardinals. Let's go!
You are Locked on Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network. Your team every day.
See, I confused my co-host. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if rhyme time, if Dr. Seuss wasn't really your wheelhouse growing up. Bo, Alex Clancy, Bo Brack, Locked on Cardinals. Follow him at Bob Brack. Follow me at Clancy's Corner. Follow the podcast at Locked on AZ Cards. Thank you to everybody who's helped us eclipse 1,700 subscribers, subs as the kids call it, on YouTube. This has been really fun, and it continues to be fun. And regardless of what happens, we will be here Monday through Friday, and giving you our insight, our analysis, Bo's terrible takes, my insight, my intellect, beating up on Bo today. You know, it feels good. It's Tuesday. It's after a few days off. There's a lot to talk about today. Bears are coming up on Sunday at Soldier Field. We'll talk about that really starting tomorrow. There's a couple interesting storylines we want to hit today. One, put a button on Kliff Kingsbury's, exit from the Cardinals. Do we both think that he's going to leave? No, but we'll put a bow on it. Number two, the Cardinals have a very favorable schedule for the rest of the season. And looking at the numbers, it's a good position for a 9-2 team to be in when they haven't been there in a long time, to play favorable opponents mixed in with some of the top teams in the NFC, although they've both sputtered as of late. And number three, if Kyler Murray's healthy-ish, is Colt McCoy still an option with how bad the rest of the NFC teams have played thus far? But first, thanks to everybody making Locked on Cardinals your first listen every day, free and available on all platforms. Bo, let's just put a quick button on this. There were weird leak reports out yesterday that Kliff Kingsbury would be a target for the Oklahoma football program, with Lincoln Kennedy going out west to USC. All I did yesterday was bring up the other side. Like, what benefits would Kliff Kingsbury have for his life if he were to take this Oklahoma job? I namely said almost double the pay a year, you would think, especially with what Mel Tucker got. And also, there wouldn't be as much parity. And what I mean by that is the NFL is defined by its parity. Last to first, every year there's a team. There's parity. Good teams are playing bad teams are good. You have the cream rising to the top with the top 1% teams, but everything else is kind of a crapshoot. And with Oklahoma, there will be stability, and we got a dog in the back. So there will be stability. This is what we do with recording when you're on location. And then look, mom's going to walk back in. You're going to see her. 3, 2, 1 with the wave. Thank you very much. He'll have stability there in the fact that he's going to get blue chippers all the time in Oklahoma.
Sure.
So that's with the stability. That's with the lack of parity, the lessening of parity. That's what I meant by that. But obviously, neither of us think he's going to go.
No, not at all. I think he'd be foolish to even entertain the offer. I mean, the only thing that college has is the ability to back up the Brinks truck and, give this romantic idea of what Kliff Kingsbury could potentially do and what kind of legacy he could leave at Oklahoma. And there's far too many like entitled, unrealistic college football fan bases, and Oklahoma is about to become one of those. Like there's already a bunch in place right now, but the fact that they're moving to the SEC, like third place finishes in the SEC, that fan base is not going to accept it. And if they're not competing for titles year in and year out, they're not going to be happy. You thought it was tough to, deal with the Arizona Cardinals fans. Just wait till you get in front of it and are coaching an unrealistic Oklahoma fan base and what their expectations are, because they think that they need to be competing for a title year in and year out. Sure, they're getting the studs to do it, but if you're going to be in the same conference as Nick Saban, I mean, what are the odds that you're going to finish first? I mean, it's not good. And I think that Kliff Kingsbury would be crazy to jump ship, especially, 9-2 team. And Kliff kind of, look, he said he's not even going to, discuss the rumors. And also the way that Adam Schefter phrased the rumor, the report was kind of clickbaity to say that Oklahoma was targeting. It really doesn't give any kind of credence that it's a mutual, that Kliff Kingsbury wants to go to Oklahoma and Oklahoma wants him. Oklahoma wants him. They want, and that's good for Cardinals fans because the fact that Kliff Kingsbury is becoming appealing after being on the hot seat, becoming a hot commodity is just unbelievable in an 11-game span.
Yeah, it's pretty insane. Follow him at Bob Brack. Follow me at Clancy's Corner. It's a lot. It's a lot to take in from what we were talking about when they went 5-11 2 years ago. The fact that they go 17-10 over 27 game span in 2020, and then the first part of 2021. It's like, what? Now Oklahoma is how the mighty have fallen. They're on that precipice right now, as you mentioned. Like, they had some good times. If you can't win a national championship with Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, or Jalen Hurts, with how well Jalen Hurts was playing, and I know they had a couple bad losses, of course, those 3-game spans, but man, I get it. It's going to be 10 mil. Like, that would be the number, 9.5 mil. That would be it. And he's been paid enough, and he's exceeded most naysayers' expectations at this point. So yeah, why would he leave? There's really no reason to, unless it would be money, unless he would get control that he doesn't necessarily want. He wants to coach football. Like, if he was given, I know that, and Ken Summers has come out, like, there's a lot of people that have said, I tweeted out that, just to look at the other side, think about it. And Ken said, no, you don't have to think about it. That's not appealing to him. And I'm like, when Ken Summers talks, I listen.
Sure.
He doesn't want to recruit. He doesn't want to do that stuff. Fine. But again, the money, if you get offered 9-year, $95 million or something wild like that, because it's only going to go up.
Right. Well,
then how do you just look at that and say no immediately?
Look at the details that are being reported about Lincoln Riley's deal with USC. I mean, it's absolutely absurd what the power of having boosters can do for you. $110 million. USC buying his homes in Norman for $500,000 over asking price. A $1 million bonus. Buying a $6 million home in LA for him. Unlimited use of the private jet for 24/7 for his family. I mean, that's even the NFL sometimes it would have a tough time competing with that. Unless Michael Bidwell's like, hey, I'll be your 24/7, private jet chauffeur. I'll fly you around whenever you want, whenever your family wants to go, or your Instagram DMs. Anybody wants to ride somewhere,
Yeah,
that's why people aren't completely shooting this down. But at the end of the day, it's going to come down to Kliff Kingsbury. He is in a really good situation. It'd be unprecedented for him to leave. 9-2. Even at the end of this thing, I mean, unless things go just south, soon, I don't see anything happen. But the question, we're going to see a lot of interest in this team, players, and that coaching staff, the rest of the way. That's just what comes with the success.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it's the thing is, like, and I brought this up yesterday, is if the Cardinals go 12-5, okay, or 13-4, which is more realistic at this point with who they play towards the tail end of the season, and they get the 1 seed, okay, and say San Francisco gets the 7 seed, whoever they play in the second round, and they lose by 2 touchdowns, it's like, well, it kind of brings everything back down to earth. And I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I'm saying if that happens, then it's like, you know what? 95 mil looks really good as opposed to coaching 1 more year. Kyler's going to get paid. Everything's going to be harder to win once you pay your quarterback, because it seemingly has never worked ever. Once you pay your quarterback, you don't win Super Bowls anymore, unless you're Tom Brady and you take all money guaranteed, and it screws with the salary cap in the favor of the team. It's going to get harder and harder to win every year. So if they don't win this year and they don't win next year, or if they regress next year, it's like, maybe I should have taken it.
Well,
I don't know. I don't know if it's the right move or not.
Kliff is going to be able to secure the bag this offseason, no matter what happens going forward. I mean, because he's already shown, progress each and every season that he's been in the desert, from 3 wins to 5 wins to 8 wins to now 9 wins plus, and then a playoff appearance. I mean, he can just point to, hey, each and every season, the team's gotten better The offense has gotten better. Everything you've asked for me, I've delivered, and then some. I've got 1 year on my contract. I've got Oklahoma knocking on my door. He's got all the leverage in the world to get himself an extension, and a very lucrative extension from the Arizona Cardinals this offseason. He's not going to be a lame duck head coach next season. There's no way that happens. That's like the least likely scenario of all of this.
Alex Clancy, Bo Brack, Locked On Cardinals. Thank you to, again, everybody making the Locked On Cardinals your first listen every day. Coming up next, the Cardinals have a pretty favorable schedule for the rest of the way. How favorable? Let's just say it's looking pretty good for the Arizona Cardinals on paper, win-loss wise, against against the opponents for the rest of the season. But first, in life, we're bound for different things. With beachbond.com vacations, you could be bound for adventure, bound for passion, bound for discovery, or bound for togetherness, bound for immersion, bound for rejuvenation, or maybe you are ready to encounter the unexpected. Personally, when I'm at a beach resort, I'm bound to end up at the poolside bar, maybe creating my own taco flight. As long as I've got a good view and a good drink in my hand, I'll be happy as can be. With beachbound.com. You can find the perfect beach vacation for you no matter what you're looking for. What are you bound for, Bo Brack? Visit beachbound.com today. Second segment, Locked On Cardinals. Thank you again to everybody who subscribes to YouTube channel, downloads the podcast, anywhere you can find your podcast. Really appreciate it. I mean, you're kind of on this journey with us, and we've been building this baby this is going on, what is this, my 5th season and Bo's 4th? Like, I don't even count really. Like, it's really gaining momentum. Really appreciate everybody who's along for the journey with us. So the Cardinals have a favorable win-loss schedule, for opponents, win-loss record, 27, 38, and 1 for the rest of the season. Obviously, this is kind of skewed a little bit by the Lions 0, 10, and 1 record, but still, I mean, the Cardinals play the Rams, they play the Cowboys, and then they play a bunch of middle rung teams. All of those teams, aside from maybe the Bears and the Lions, are kind of outside vying for a wild card role. You probably take Seattle out of that too. But I mean, they have the Colts, and like it's not the easiest of schedules, but the peaks playing Dallas, which I'm assuming will get flexed, and they play the Rams on Monday Night Football at home. Like, could you see them going 5-1 and ending 14-3? Sure. I think that's kind of the target, right? Where you'd split with the Rams or the Cowboys and you win out the rest of them. I know they have the Colts at home on Christmas, a weird week, Christmas Day, home. The Cardinals haven't played well at home really at all. So I don't know. I mean, you kind of target a 14-3 here, right? If you're kind of hedging a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I look at this as you go worst case, you go 3-3 because you should win this week against the Bears. They're a bad team. They went down to the wire with the Lions. Then you play the Rams. You could call that a potential loss on the schedule as far as what remains. Then the Lions, that's a big win. And then you've got the Colts. That's a tough team, despite the loss that they suffered this weekend against the Bucs. They took them to the wire. And then you've got the Cowboys. That's a big contest. And then the Seahawks should be a win. So I see 3 teams that are very beatable. And the Arizona Cardinals, as far as being favored, maybe they're not favored in the Cowboys game. I still think that's, if they're at full strength, that they probably could be on the road at the Jerry Dome. But likely, out of the next 6 games, they should be favored at least 5 out of the next 6 games. And if you look at that, yeah, sure, they can go 5-1. They go 4-2, realistic. That would be an absurd season. And then if it's worst case, they go 3-3. Not the worst thing that could happen. I mean, that's a pretty impressive season for this Arizona Cardinals team, still in contention for everything that they want, the division and the top NFC playoff seed.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at the Packers, and this isn't necessarily like scoreboard watching, but it's just, you take a peek. They have, let me see. They have they have their bye week coming up, I believe. And then they have the Bears in 2 weeks.
Right.
Then they have the Ravens, the Browns, the Vikings, and the Lions. So Ravens, Browns, Vikings. The Vikings play them tough. They play them tough every year, it seems like. That's always a popcorn matchup for football fans. They play the Ravens, they play the Browns. So they probably have equal to or tougher than schedule than the Cardinals do, with the Browns and the Lions being the teams that both of them play.
Yeah.
But I mean, like we can have conversations. Say the Cardinals beat the Bears. And I said that was a trap game early on, just going across off the bye week, especially that was before Kyler got hurt. So
Mhm.
you go there, then you have the Rams at home. If you win both of those, you're going to sit Kyler against the Lions regardless. I mean, I think at this point, like depending obviously on what the Packers do, but man, like with Colt McCoy as a weapon now to be able to not have to play Kyler Murray down the stretch. I mean, it's a beautiful tool to have in the bag that they didn't have even close to over the last couple seasons. So it could get really weird down the stretch depending on what games the Cardinals win. Like if they beat the Bears and beat the Rams, we're going to be having some weird conversations.
Yeah, 11-2 is just absolute driver's seat for everything that that any team cheering for a top team in the NFC. That's the position that you want to be in. 11-2 is absurd. I think the Chicago Bears should be an easy W. I don't care who's playing quarterback for them, Andy Dalton, the Red Rifle, or Justin Fields, who's nursing a rib injury. And then, are they going to do it for Matt Nagy? It's almost like if you're a Bears fan, you'd rather have an interim head coach in place, trying to have a team rally around them and play for jobs for next season. Because right now they're just in a weird, gray area. It plays to the Arizona Cardinals' advantage. One thing I will say, Kliff Kingsbury 0-2, his coach team's 0-2 coming off a bye week, so he's got to continue to change different narratives throughout this season, and that's another one of them. Really good teams, really good coaches. They've got well above 500 as far as coming off buys. They use that off as an advantage. The Arizona Cardinals have not been able to take advantage so far through 2 seasons, now in their third with Kliff Kingsbury.
Yeah. Follow him at Bob Brack. Follow me at Clancy's Corner. Follow the podcast at Locked On AZ Cards. It should be interesting. That Lions gate, like this whole schedule is just worked out perfectly. Everything is worked out. Obviously, you never want Kyler to get hurt, DeAndre Hopkins, etc. You don't want other players. I give this disclaimer every time I talk about this because I don't want to be taken in the wrong light. But everything is worked out to the Cardinals' advantage. Everything. It just has. And you look at the rest of the schedule, they play the Lions after they play the Rams. Like they play like the Colts Cowboys is going to be interesting, but they finish the season at home against the Seahawks. Like it couldn't be stacked up much better, especially with, all the cold weather stuff. The Lions are in a dome. Cowboys are in a dome. They play the Colts at home. The Seahawks in January, it's going to be cold up there. They play at home. Like they don't have to play any cold weather games. I mean, it's going to be brisk at Soldier Field, but man, like everything, like just take a second, take a woosah and just appreciate like the little things that have just bounced their way. The Cardinals have executed like they didn't last year because these same balls had bounced their way last year, but they didn't execute. They didn't take care of business against backup quarterbacks towards the end of the season. They're seemingly taking care of business thus far, and barring any sort of catastrophe, they're going to coast into the playoffs with a top 2 or 3 seed. Coast.
Yeah,
To a top
and
three seed at this point.
that's what you do early in the season when you take care of business. Like last year, they didn't against Detroit, against Carolina. Sure, they fell short against Carolina again this season, but if you win those games last year, like you're playing with house money at that point, and you have a lot more margin for error, and they just didn't. And at this point, they're playing with way more than house money. They're in an incredible spot right now, and they're playing against the Chicago Bears in Week 13 with the chance to get their, the first team to double-digit wins. It's unreal, and I don't think anybody had that going into the NFL season this year.
Follow him and Bob Rock. Follow me at Clancy's Corner. Coming up next, should the Cardinals sit Kyler Murray anyways? Because as Bo mentioned, Kliff has alluded to Kyler getting better, but not being 100% full go. 128 hours or whatever ahead of their game on Sunday. The hours get really tough after 96. They do. Should they just start Colt McCoy? Do they start Colt McCoy because of how bad everybody else has been playing? Or is that one game lead over Green Bay not something to get cute with? We'll talk about that. But first, Bo has something to talk about, doesn't he?
Yeah, I'll tell you what the spread is early on between the Arizona Cardinals and the Chicago Bears on the other side of this. But Bet Online has it covered for all season, more props, odds, lines, and more than ever before. all football season long and continues to march to the playoffs. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the sports action this season. Head over to their new updated desktop mobile website. Sign up today, receive a 50% welcome bonus. All you have to do is put in the promo code Locked On. You put in $100, you get 50 free bucks to play around with. You put in 50, you get 25 bucks. You see how to it's easy to do the math even for a dummy like me. From basketball, football, NHL, boxing, UFC to your favorite Vegas casino games, don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. Bet online, the fastest, easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. Bet online, where the game starts.
All right, wrapping it up here, Tuesday edition of Locked On Cardinals. Follow him at Bo Brack. Follow me at Clancy's Corner. Again, thank you to everybody making Locked On Cardinals your first listen every day, free and available on all platforms. We see you in the chats on Twitter, on YouTube. We missed you last Sunday without a game, but we're going to dive deeper into the Bears game coming up tomorrow. But first, just a little fun post-bye midweek conversation. Should Colt McCoy be QB1 on Sunday at Soldier Field with what we saw happen to the Rams, with the Cardinals still having a one-game lead, even though that one-game lead turns into losing the tiebreaker if they were to lose and the Packers were to win next week? Do you start Kyler if he's 80%, or do you roll with Colt McCoy again?
Start Kyler. You knock the rust off before the big game against the LA Rams. And if that's a half, it's a half. He goes out there and takes care of business. Hopefully puts the game away in the second half. Doesn't even matter. Yeah. I mean, like to your point, a couple of times this season, Colt McCoy should play the fourth quarter, as far as the Arizona Cardinals go. And that's a good thing for Kyler Murray. But if he can get in there and he can get some reps, and you can see the guy that can run 20 miles per hour because his backup can't do that. You can see the guy that can throw ropes down the field at, 30 yards, 40 yards. The backup Colt McCoy can't do that. Just get kind of reintroduce himself to the fan base. It's been nice to go 2-1, but this MVP candidate to get back in the lineup and just people see what they got excited for going into the season this year to see Kyler Murray play and suit up for the Arizona Cardinals. That's what it's all about. You want to see him go. Looking at the forecast, I mean, it looks cloudy. It's going to be 37. It's going to be football weather. It's nothing too crazy. I mean, maybe if it's slick, if it's raining, if it's snowing, maybe you think about Colt McCoy. But if it's going to be okay football weather, fine. Just put them in there. 7.5 point favorites. I mean, the Arizona Cardinals are overwhelming favorites in this game on the road. And, just make sure that you take care of business in the first half, get your work done, get in, get out.
Yeah. I mean, in cold weather games, that's when it gets weird. That's when games tighten up. That's when run games are important. That's when the defense becomes more important. Obviously, it's important every week, but like that's going to be a James Conner. It's going to be Benjamin. It's going to be a different game plan. It's going to be a slow it down, grind it out, James Conner-like game for the Cardinals offensively. And sure, there's obviously going to be, pieces from the wide receivers, et cetera, but it's just something to talk about. Yeah, I mean, I think you start Kyler. I thought you started Kyler last week or 2 weeks ago. But the fact that he's having 38 days off, 38 days, that's a lot of days. And he should be ready to go. Like, unless we don't know how severe it was to begin with, you would think that he'd be ready to go. And there's no easy defenses to play against in the NFL. They're all made of large men who are very, very athletic and who can rip your head off. So it's not like, oh, you know what? Let's walk around a couple of these mines, and then you have a couple little easy games towards the tail end. All these defenses are tough. Everybody they play against for the rest of the year, even though the Lions have some playmakers on defense. The Seahawks have some playmakers, hard hitters on defense. So it's not going to be like, well, let's protect Kyler. He's going to go out when he's 90%. Or what are we doing here?
Yeah. I think the same goes for a guy like for DeAndre Hopkins, who kind of gets lost because your top player, your franchise player, Kyler's been on the shelf, but also your second best player, DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, we haven't barely talk about the fact that he hasn't played same amount of time that Kyler hasn't played. Same amount of time off. Hamstrings are just as tricky as ankles, and it's important for him to get back in there and find his rhythm because now, this is the time of the year, like if you follow Tom Brady's career and his teams that he's played on, this is the time of year that those teams start to lock in. They start to find a rhythm, and then, they get ready for the postseason and they start to gear up. They start to beat the teams that they should beat, and it's no question about it. And they just dial in. And this is an opportunity against a, inferior opponent, the Chicago Bears, to get some work done and then also kind of get everybody back in the fold. It's not only just DeAndre Hopkins. It could be Justin Pugh. It could be Max Garcia. We'll see what Chase Edmonds' timetable is, because as Alex and I have stressed, the importance of keeping James Conner close to the workload that's made him so successful is so important for this team, that you don't want him to have to go into Chicago and have 25 touches in order for this team to win. Like you want to keep it under 20, and it just goes for the entire offense. I mean, it's gearing up for with the games that matter. And this is a game. Sure, it matters in the win and loss column, but just get in there. Just really just business focused on this game.
Yeah, because after Sunday, they have 3 out of 5 games at home, and one of the road games is the Lions. Like we're starting to like chunk down on this season. It sucks because we're 12 weeks through, and nobody appreciates it. Nobody appreciates it between week 5 to week 14. You just expect it to be there in perpetuity. And the last 4 weeks you appreciate just as fans, and the first 4 weeks you appreciate the kind of middle. It happens every year. Regardless of how much you think you're going to appreciate it or not, it's gone. It's gone.
Yeah.
2/3 of the season is already gone.
Well, there's a couple important things left for this team to figure out right now, and this is the perfect time against the opponent and a couple of the opponents coming up. And it's one, to get your stars reacclimated to the offense. It's also becoming your strength should be at home. Like, it's been great that the team has been so successful on the road, 6-0, that you can win big road games, but you have to, the reason you want to win so many games in the regular season is to host games in the playoffs. And it doesn't matter if you're not a good home team, they have to take advantage of all those home games. They have to learn to really use that as just a weapon as far as the Red Sea and playing in front of them. So that's key going forward. And then, of course, David Montgomery, he's nothing to sneeze at. He's a good running back. I think that's a good opportunity for this rush defense to show that, hey, they can get back on track and stop, RBs that can gash you and just slow down opposing offensive rush attacks.
For sure. And I mean, it's the Browns defense. Roquan Smith is still there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they've got, it's still the Browns. They're just the Browns. Their defense has kept that team in many games this year. Ask the fantasy football players. Like, that defense has been stout sometimes, and then it just got absolutely torched others. But
there's nobody in that secondary. There's just nobody.
Right.
There's no players in it, and I think that it's a perfect opponent, especially with Khalil Mack out, for Kyler Murray to come out and just play target practice, just really get in the rhythm passing the football.
Well, and this is going to be a nice test, and obviously these are all what ifs and stuff. Where you're going into week 13 here, that who else plays in cold weather? Green Bay. And if the Cardinals don't get that 1 seed, that might be the final test before making the Super Bowl. What are we talking about? Is that something that came out of my mouth after week 12? Sure, Tom Brady, the greatest ever, will have something to say about that as well. But I feel like it's going to come down to, like the tennis matches over the last 10 years. It's Federer, Djokovic, and Nadal. Whoever doesn't have another one of those guys on his side of the bracket makes the finals. And you got to see if the Cardinals will be able to get that bye, can have Green Bay and Tampa Bay play each other and only have to play one of them. That's ideal. We're getting ahead of ourselves. No, Cole McCoy shouldn't start on Sunday.
I mean, it's important to note, the Bucks and the Packers, they're 10-0 combined at home. They haven't lost a game at home. I mean, you don't want to go there. And so that's what this is also so important, this part of the season, to make sure you're not playing a road game against those two teams.
For sure. And that it's coming down the stretch. One thing happens in Tampa Bay. Number 87 puts a jersey on and he starts playing. And Rob Gronkowski on Sunday had 9 catches for 130 yards or whatever it was.
123, yes.
That's when Tampa Bay is turning on the afterburners to make a playoff push, because they are ready. They want that 1 seed too. It's not like they just lay in wait. And this is what's happening. Their monster is awoken. The Cardinals have to take care of business, especially against teams they need to beat, even though it's the Bears on the road in the early time slot. Alex Clancy, Bo Brack, Locked on Cardinals. That'll do it for us today. Follow him at Bo Brack. Follow me at Clancy's Corner. We will talk to you tomorrow.